He's back." The words were quiet, almost a whisper, but they landed in my office with the force of a physical blow. They carried the heavy, familiar weight of a recurring nightmare, a storm cloud that gathered on the horizon with predictable menace. I looked up from the stack of installation orders on my desk, the black ink of the spreadsheets blurring for a moment. Maria, one of our best and most resilient customer service representatives, was standing in my office doorway. Her shoulders, usually held with a professional confidence, were slumped in defeat. The usual bright, intelligent spark in her eyes was gone, extinguished and replaced by a look of pure, weary dread. In the cable business, you get used to dealing with angry people. It's a fundamental part of the job description, right alongside understanding signal strength and deciphering billing codes. Outages happen, prices go up, technology fails. Anger is a natural, if unpleasant, byproduct. But this was different. I could feel it in the tense silence that hung in the air. This wasn't about a service outage or a billing dispute. This was personal. And as the new supervisor in town, a man still trying to get the lay of the land, it was about to become my problem. My name is Tom Sterling. I'm 45 years old, and at the time of this story, I had just moved to a mid-sized, deceptively pleasant city in the heart of the Midwest. My new role was field operations supervisor for a major cable company, a position that came with a mandate to whip a struggling, underperforming branch into shape. I'm a big guy. I've been a big guy my entire life. I stand 6'7" in my work boots and weigh around 335 pounds, most of it solid. My hands are big, my handshake is firm, an iron grip I was just born with, a genetic quirk from a long line of farmers and factory workers. I've never been the type to throw my weight around. In fact, for most of my life, I've done the opposite. I've learned to slouch a little in photographs, to make myself smaller in crowded rooms, to speak with a softer voice than my frame would suggest. I've always believed that respect is something you earn through your actions, your integrity, and your competence, not through your physical size. But I've also learned a hard lesson over the years. In a world that will always have its share of bullies, sometimes size is a tool. And if you are forced into a position where you have to use that tool to protect good, decent people, you use it decisively and without hesitation. I was the new guy in a town where everyone seemed to know everyone else. I was still learning the names of the streets, let alone the intricate web of local power players. I'd been hired to fix systems, streamline installations, and improve performance metrics. For my first few weeks, I was buried in spreadsheets and logistical tangles, working from my office in the back of the building. I hadn't had much interaction with the front office staff, the women who were the public face of our company, but I knew from her file that Maria was a rock star. She had years of experience, a flawless record, and a reputation for being patient, professional, and able to de-escalate even the most furious customer with a calm, steady voice. To see her this rattled, this defeated, set off every alarm bell in my head. "A customer escalation?" I asked, leaning back in my chair and gesturing for her to come in. "Tell me everything that's going on before I go out there." Maria stepped into my office and closed the door softly behind her, a small act that spoke volumes about her need for privacy and her fear of being overheard. "It's Mr. Albright," she said, her voice low and strained. "He's a regular. He comes in at least once a month, sometimes more often if he's feeling particularly bored, I think. He doesn't have a service issue, Tom. He never has a service issue. He just comes in to yell." I frowned, setting my pen down. Yell about what? If there's no problem with his account, what's his complaint? What's the catalyst? "The programming," she sighed, the sound heavy with the fatigue of a battle fought too many times. She began rubbing her temples, a gesture of pure exhaustion. "He's angry that we dropped some obscure channel from the 1970s that he liked, or that we don't carry a specific out-of-market sports package from another region. Things that we, the people standing behind this counter, have absolutely zero control over. We've explained it to him a dozen times. We've shown him the corporate memos. The decisions are made at a national level, hundreds of miles away, by people in suits we'll never meet. He knows this. He just doesn't care. He likes to come in and berate workers. He calls the girls at the front desk incompetent, lazy, worthless. You name it, he said it. He makes a huge, theatrical scene, enjoys making everyone in the lobby uncomfortable, and then, when he's had his fun, he leaves. I felt a slow, hot burn start deep in my chest. I've dealt with every kind of customer imaginable in my 20 years in this industry. The frustrated ones, the confused ones, the genuinely angry ones who have every right to be upset over a missed appointment or a faulty installation. I have all the patience in the world for them. It's my job to help them. But I have a special, ice-cold contempt for people who use service workers as their personal, verbal punching bags. The ones who get a thrill out of wielding their petty power over someone who is paid to stand there and take it. Why has this been allowed to continue? I asked, my voice sharper and harder than I intended. Has anyone from management ever stepped in to support you? Maria shook her head, a sad, cynical smile touching her lips. It was the smile of someone whose faith in the system had been eroded long ago. The last supervisor, Mr. Henderson, told us to just have a thick skin and not take it personally. He stayed in his office whenever Mr. Albright came in. He didn't want to deal with it, because of who Mr. Albright is. And who exactly is he? I asked, leaning forward now, my elbows on my desk. His family is the Albrights, she said, as if that single phrase explained everything. In this town, it probably did. They own a few of the big car dealerships, a major construction company that gets most of the city contracts. His uncle, I think it is on the city council. He makes sure everyone in the room knows it within 5 minutes of meeting him. He drops names like he's throwing confetti at a parade. He plays golf with the police chief. He's on a first-name basis with the mayor. He acts like he owns this town, and that his family name gives him a free pass to treat the rest of us like dirt. I nodded slowly, the entire, pathetic picture becoming crystal clear in my mind. I'd met 100 Mr. Albrights in my life, in a dozen different cities. They are all cut from the same cheap cloth. Small, insecure men who puff themselves up with the borrowed importance of others. Pathetic little tyrants whose only sense of power comes from intimidating people they know can't, or won't, fight back. They are, without exception, cowards. So, let me get this straight, I summarized, ticking the points off on my fingers. He's an egotistical toad with no legitimate service issue, who gets his kicks by verbally abusing your staff in a public forum. And he's been getting away with it for years, because he's related to some semi-important local family, and my predecessor was too spineless to do his job. That's about the size of it. Maria confirmed, a flicker of something, maybe hope, in her eyes. I stood up. The decision was already made. Okay, I've heard enough. Since I'm new in town, I've never had the pleasure of meeting him or his very important family. Why don't you go back out there, and in about 60 seconds, you can introduce me. Maria's eyes widened slightly, a hint of alarm mixed with her hope. What? What are you going to do? I gave her a calm, reassuring smile. I'm going to go have a firm, friendly conversation with our valued customer. Don't you worry about a thing. She hesitated for a moment, searching my face, then nodded and walked out. I took a deep, centering breath. I don't like using intimidation. It's a cheap tactic, the tool of the weak and the unimaginative. But what I was about to do wasn't about cheap intimidation. It was a strategic application of physics and psychology. It was about establishing a new set of boundaries. It was about claiming my territory and protecting my people. This wasn't a customer service issue anymore. This was a pest control problem. I walked out of my office and through the door that led to the front lobby. The scene was exactly as Maria had described, a toxic little one-act play of abuse. A man in his 50s, dressed in an expensive golf shirt and pleated slacks, was leaning over the counter, his face a blotchy, unpleasant red as he pontificated. Maria and another young woman, Sarah, were standing behind the counter, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on their keyboards, just absorbing the tirade like human shields. The man, Albright, had his back to the wall, a poor defensive position, I noted absently, a tactical error. He was so engrossed in the sound of his own booming voice that he didn't notice me until I was halfway across the room. I didn't rush. I didn't stomp or stride aggressively. I just walked, a big man moving with a quiet, deliberate purpose that often makes more noise than shouting ever could. The few other customers in the lobby fell silent, their eyes tracking my movement. I closed the distance quickly. I didn't give him a chance to see me and prepare. I was in his space before his brain had registered my presence. "Good morning," I boomed, my voice cheerful, friendly, and completely at odds with the tense, poisonous atmosphere in the room. I made direct, unwavering eye contact. I didn't give him a chance to greet me, to size me up, or to launch a preemptive verbal strike. I was already there, my right hand extended for a handshake. "I'm Tom Sterling, the new supervisor here. Maria tells me you had some questions for us." He was momentarily thrown off balance, a deer in the headlights. He had been in the middle of a rant about the injustice of losing a channel that aired black and white westerns, and my sudden, friendly interruption had completely derailed his train of thought. He looked from my face down to my outstretched hand, a flicker of deep annoyance crossing his features. In his world, he was the one who initiated conversations, who controlled the room, who decided when others were allowed to speak. But he was trapped by the unbreakable rules of social convention. To refuse a handshake would be an obvious, deliberate slight, and even a self-important bully like him knew it would make him look weak and rude. He reluctantly, almost disdainfully, put his hand in mine, and the game began. The moment my fingers wrapped around his, I knew I had him. His hand was soft and fleshy, the hand of a man whose heaviest lifting involved a golf club and a steak knife. My hand, by contrast, is a slab of meat and bone, calloused and thick from 20 years of pulling heavy gauge cable, climbing utility poles in all weather, and working with heavy industrial tools. I clasped his hand firmly, just as you would in any normal, professional business handshake. We maintained direct eye contact. I kept a warm, friendly, almost beatific smile plastered on my face. His own face still held the ghost of a smirk, a look of arrogant condescension that he hadn't yet wiped away. And then, with the smile never leaving my face, I began to squeeze. It wasn't a sudden violent crush. That would have been too obvious, too thuggish. This was a slow, methodical, and inexorable increase in pressure. It was the difference between a hammer blow and a hydraulic press. I felt the soft flesh of his hand give way, my fingers pressing deep, searching for the bones beneath. I watched his eyes. The smirk was the first thing to go, faltering and then disappearing completely, replaced by a flicker of confusion. The confusion then morphed into surprise as the pressure continued to build, steady and relentless. I felt the delicate metacarpal bones of his hand begin to grind against each other. I knew the exact moment I found the threshold of his pain tolerance. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. His body, which had been leaning back arrogantly against the wall in a posture of dominance, began to lean forward slightly as he instinctively, unconsciously tried to relieve the pressure. He went up on his toes, just a fraction of an inch, a silent, involuntary testament to the crushing force I was exerting. Still, I smiled. My friendly, cheerful "how can I help you" smile never wavered. I watched his own smile completely evaporate, replaced by a pale, sweaty mask of disbelief and dawning horrified pain. He tried to pull his hand back, a weak, pathetic little tug, but it was like being caught in a vice. He was going nowhere. We stood there for what was probably only 5 or 6 seconds, but I'm sure for him it felt like an eternity. An entire, silent conversation was had in that crushing handshake. My grip said, "I know who you are. I know what you do. I am not impressed. And it's over." His panicked eyes said, "Who the hell are you? This isn't supposed to happen. You're not playing by the rules. My uncle is on the city council." My unwavering smile said, "I am the new rules." Just as I felt his knuckles begin to pop and grind in a way that was on the verge of causing actual, lasting damage, I released him. The release was as sudden and surprising as the grip had been gradual. His hand dropped to his side like a dead fish. I kept my smile firmly in place, my posture open and friendly. "So," I said again, my voice still radiating cheerful, oblivious helpfulness. "How can I help you today, sir?" He cradled his right hand with his left, his face ashen. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at a spot on the floor, his mind scrambling to reboot. The bully's operating system had crashed. He had just been confronted with a form of power that his uncle on the city council couldn't protect him from. It was primal. It was physical. It was undeniable. He muttered, finally looking up, but his eyes darted away from mine, unable to meet my gaze. I had some questions about the programming. But it's not important. Not worth wasting our time on. He turned and practically fled for the door, his entitled swagger completely gone, replaced by the hurried scuttle of a defeated man. "Well, thank you for stopping by, Mr. Albright," I called after him, my voice echoing in the now cavernous silence of the lobby. "Please, feel free to come back and ask for me personally anytime you have questions or service issues. My door is always open." He didn't look back. The glass door swung shut behind him, and he was gone. I turned to Maria and Sarah. They were staring at me, their mouths slightly agape, a look of stunned, wide-eyed disbelief on their faces. Then, a slow, brilliant smile spread across Maria's face, followed by a quiet, suppressed giggle that she tried to hide behind her hand. What did you do?" she asked, her voice a mix of awe and amusement. "I just introduced myself," I said, my face a perfect mask of innocence as I turned to walk back to my office. Gave him a firm handshake. Made sure he knows we're here to help. I don't like being that guy. I truly don't. I believe intimidation is the bully's tool. But I also believe that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to speak the only language he understands. It's a language of dominance, of unshakable boundaries, of immediate and unpleasant consequences. I knew that no man, especially an egotistical toad like Albright, would ever call the police or complain to corporate because another man's handshake was too strong. His fragile pride would never allow it. He would never admit that he had been so utterly and completely physically dominated by a lowly cable company supervisor. To do so would be to admit his own weakness to the world. I claimed my territory that day. I drew a line in the sand and made it clear that my employees were under my protection. And the message was received, loud and clear. Mr. Albright never came back to the office to harass the staff again. We still saw his account pop up for legitimate service calls now and then, but he always requested a technician be sent to his home. He never, ever set foot in our lobby again. The reign of the town bully, at least in our small corner of it, was over, and that, for me, was a far more satisfying victory than any performance metric I could ever hit. It was the day I stopped being the new supervisor and started being their leader.